All right, in the next part of this lesson, we are going to go over how to take a story problem and set up our system and the objective function. Okay, so we have to come up with this now. Okay. So what I would like you guys to do is go ahead and pause the video and read through this problem. Now, for these kind of problems, you might need to read through it 3 or 4 times, especially when we first start doing these, because there's a lot of information to decipher. Okay. Now, when we start writing our information, we actually want to start with the objective function. So we're going to come up with this part first, and then that will help us determine what our variables have to be, so that it'll make this part easier to set up. Okay. So if I skip ahead, it is talking about maximizing a profit. So instead of Z, I'm going to use P for profit. So P equals, and then let's see here. We are making $1 for each economy blend and $4 for each superior blend. So that's how I'm defining my variables. And the letters that you're choosing doesn't matter. So I'm going to use E and S, but if you want to use X and Y or other letters, that part doesn't matter as long as we define what they mean. All right, so this will be 1E, so I'm just going to write it as E, plus 4S. Okay. And again, my E stands for the economy blend, S stands for the superior blend. So that means that when I start writing my list of constraints, I have to use those same variables. So next thing that we want to look for are kind of our totals, or the least amount we need for something, or the max amount that we have to use something. So when we set up our inequalities, we'll have to have things less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to those kind of numbers. So when we are looking at this, this says that the coffee house has 1,584 ounces of A grade coffee, and then 1,536 ounces of B grade coffee. And we're making a blend between those. So once we run out of coffee, we can't make any more of those blends. So that means in one of my equations, I need something to be less than or equal to the 1,584. And I'm just gonna put a little A by this to remind myself I'm dealing with grade A. And then the other one, we need to be less than or equal to 1,536 for grade B. Okay. So that tells me all the numbers dealing with grade A have to go together into the same inequality. All the numbers dealing with grade B have to go together. So sometimes it's helpful. I'm going to circle my grade A numbers, and I'm just going to underline the grade B ones. And then as we're reading too, I'm going to start putting them into the inequalities. Okay, so these are blended into 1 pound packages. So really this number is just kind of extra information that we don't need. And the economy blend contains 3 ounces of grade A. Okay, so that means that in my grade A inequality, I need 3 ounces for each economy blend. And then we'll have to add that to our amount for the superior blend. Okay, and then also dealing with our economy, we have, let me circle this one, dealing with 8 ounces of grade B. So this one will have to go into my second inequality. So I will have 8 times the economy for that grade B. Okay. And then in my superior blend, we have 9 ounces of grade A. So that will go up here, so 9S. And then we have 3 ounces of grade B. So this will be 3S in the other one. And then now we're back to dealing with our numbers to make the profit, which we've already used in that objective function. So these are the 2 most important inequalities. And then again, we're dealing with real world scenario. So once we run out of our blends, or we can't make a negative number of our blends. So we need to include that our E has to be greater than or equal to 0, and the S has to be greater than or equal to 0. Again, that just shows that I can't make a negative number of mixes. Okay, so this is my list of constraints. Here is my objective function. Okay, so now we are going through this process to figure out how to maximize that profit. So the first thing we're going to need to do is kind of decide which one, if we're thinking about it in terms of a graph, which one we want to represent the x-axis and the y-axis. So just to make it simple, I'm going to say that E kind of represents my x's and the s's represent the y's. And then we're going to need to do a rough sketch here. So let me just get my axes set up. And so this represents the x and y axis. Okay. And then we're going to need to solve these for the s before we can start doing our sketches. So let's start doing that. So on the top one, we're going to have to subtract the 3e and then divide everything by 9. So when we do that, this is going to give us s less than or equal to, and then if we simplify, negative 1/3 e plus 176. All right, so again, I subtracted this and then divided everything by 9. And then we'll also need to do the same thing, so I'm going to subtract 8, divide everything by 3. So for this one, we will have s less than or equal to negative 8/3 e plus 512. Okay. So now I'm ready to start doing my rough sketch. So we start with, I'll start with the bottom one since my intercept is bigger. So we're going to be all the way up here at 512. And then we're going down 8/3. So this is going to be a fairly steep slope. So it's going to look something like that. And then here, starting at 176, so that's actually going to be way down here. And then we're going down 1/3. So that's going to be a flatter slope. So it's going to end up looking something like that. And then we have to be below both those lines, but still in that positive quadrant. So this is where that feasible region is. And now we need to figure out our points of intersection. So I'm going to need this point, this one, and this one. Okay. So this one's easy. This is just at 0, 0. This one's also easy because it's at 0 and then that y-intercept of 176. And then at this one, we know that the y is 0 since it's on the x-axis, so we'll have to figure out what that is. And then we'll have to find this intersection. Okay. So over here, I'm just going to start writing the coordinates that I know. So 0, 0. And then we have 0, 176. And then now we'll need to figure out those last two. So to do that, we're just going to use our calculator to help us. So if you have your graphing calculator, go ahead and grab it. I'm also going to redo this type of problem to show you how to use the Alex calculator. So if you are doing it that way, you're going to want to reference those videos. Okay. All right, so into the y equals, typing this in. So remember, we're using x in that e spot. So negative 1, so make sure we're using the negative key at the bottom. So 1 divided by 3x, and then plus 176. Negative 8 divided by 3x plus 512. Now for this one, we're not going to just want to press zoom 6 to do a standard window because we're not going to be able to see our lines. Because in the standard window, we are only going up to positive 10 for the x and y. So we're going to need to press our window button. And then we're going to need to adjust this to accommodate these intercepts. So I'm going to leave it at negative 10, and then I'm going to change this to be just a little bit bigger than this number. So let's maybe pick 530, and let's do a scale of 50. Okay. And then y's, I'm going to just make it the exact same. So negative 10, 530, scale of 50. And then you have to remember to press the graph key after we change the window. So if you use your zoom key, it's gonna change these. So make sure if you are changing them that you're pressing this graph button next. Okay. All right, so this one was our steeper line, so that second one. And then this one is that top one. So we need to find that intersection point right there. So second trace, and then go down to number 5 where it says intersect and press enter. And we're using our left and right arrow keys to move closer to the intersection point. So that should be good enough. And then I'm just going to press enter 3 times. So, and you'll notice up here how it's changing and that your question is changing. So make sure that this is, when it says second curve, that's your Y2. Otherwise you might get an error message. And then anytime we see the word guess, we have to press enter again. So we have to see that word intersection to know that we are done. So that intersection point is 144, 128. And then now we also need this one. So to figure that out, we're going to use our calculator, but I'm going to go back to the home screen. So second mode to quit. We know that it's intersecting this line, which is coming from this equation right here. And we know that our y value is 0, or in this case, our s value is 0. So I'm actually going to go back to this version of it, and I'm just going to plug 0 into this spot. So I'm doing 8e plus 3 times 0 equals 1,536. So really that's just going to cancel out. So I have to divide both sides by this 8. So that will give me, let's see, 536 divided by 8 is 192. So 192. So that is the missing x value, which is again our e. So that is going to be in this point right here. So 192, 0. So now that we have all the intersection points, we are ready to plug them in to our objective function and then just simplify that. So let's start doing that. So equals, so this will be 0 plus 4 times 0, which is just 0. Here I will have 0 plus 4 times 176. So let's see, that is going to give me 704. This will be 192 plus 4 times 0, which is 192. And the last one, we are taking 144 plus 4 times 128. So let's see, 4 times 128 is really 512. So if we add those two together, this will give us 656. Okay. Now, again, if we're trying to figure out if we want the smallest or the biggest, we have to go back and look at what our question is asking. So it's asking how many packages of each blend should it make to maximize the profit. So that's telling me I need to pick the biggest number. So that's going to be the 704. But now on this problem, again, it's specifically asking, let me zoom back out a little bit, asking how many of each package. So in this case, we actually really need to give the point as the answer. So my answer for the economy blend would be 0. And then for the superior blend would be 176. And I really need to remember to label. Okay, so that's going to be my final answer. Okay. So most of the time for the story problems, we're going to be giving the point for our answer, whereas when they were doing these kind of problems, it asked for the value that was the maximum or minimum, which is when we would give this number. Okay, so again, we have to make sure that we are really paying attention to what our question is asking for, so we're answering it correctly. Okay. All right, so in the next videos, we're just going to do some more practice.